You're their only power. You're their only power. So first and foremost, thank everyone for joining and being part of the No Dairy Challenge for 30 days. And first and foremost, I want to commend you all for just taking this step. And within this, we just want you to be aware of yourself, right? And aware of the changes that you're gonna feel within these 30 days. You're not gonna feel them, of course, on day 1, day 2, but as you furtherly progress, you can start feeling the change and start seeing how your body's responding to what you're doing with this challenge. Okay. So just want to go about how week 1 is going to be covered. So week 1, every Saturday, we're going to have a Zoom call, and that Zoom call is going to be roughly for about an hour. If we need to be on a little bit longer than an hour, we definitely can. But every day is going to be an hour, so definitely put an hour to your side for 12 p.m. Eastern time. If you're on the West Coast, of course, that's going to be 9. If you're on Pacific time, that's going to be 10 o'clock for you. So, but every day we're going to have about an hour call. If you want to stay on longer, like I said, you definitely can. And from that week 1, we're just going to cover some of the small things, such as a discussion about dairy, the effects, weight loss, what are sentient foods and the benefits of that, and how we heal diseases, right? How we heal ourselves, whether that's mentally, emotionally, and physically. And since we're focusing on more foods, that's going to be more of a physical thing that we're going to be focusing on. Then going into week 2, we're going to have holistic fitness. That's actually going to be done by an individual that's actually going to be joining us on this call, by Alexis. And we'll probably do introductory with her either later on today or prior to the class. And then on week 3, we'll have breath work done by Terrence, and he'll go into breath work, why it's beneficial for you, and kind of give you more of an introductory into breath work if you've never actually done breath work. Then going to week 4, Antoine, as well as myself, will go into a heart talk. And that's more just talking about the challenges that you may have faced in a 30-day challenge, whether you had support or whether you didn't have support from home, or whether you faced difficult challenges at home while you were doing this challenge. Just really discussing everything about the challenge and just how you were feeling as well, also going into that. And that's going to be November 6th. That's going to be a bit longer, because that's going to be about 2 hours. And we're just going to go and talk about other various things that may have popped up in your mind during this entire challenge that you would like to speak about. Okay, so that's ideally the email that you should have gotten from Terrence, just to give you. How are you doing? Tonight we have a new, did somebody else just join? Okay, but that's going to be the basis of what we're going to cover. If there's any questions about the email that you received, or if you didn't get the email, please let us know. And if you didn't get the email, put in the chat that you didn't receive the email, and just put your name as well as your email address. And then we'll go ahead and have that sent out to you after the Zoom call as well. Everything that is on Zoom is going to be recorded, so you do not have to worry if you're not writing everything down. We'll go ahead and send you we'll send you the video once we're finished. Okay. So without further ado, I do want to do a small, quick icebreaker, have everyone introduce themselves, and just really where you're from, first name, last name, and what made you want to join and be part of the 30-day challenge. So I will go in order of what I see on my grid, unless we have someone who would like to go first, introduce themselves. Okay, so I'm going to go off of my grid. So the first person on my grid is going to be Terrence. I'll have Terrence introduce himself, then followed by Antoine, then followed by Karen, my mother, Aaliyah, Claire, and then Candy. So Terrence, if you can lead us off with, well, I know why you're here, but just give us your first name and why this challenge is personal to you and why it's important to you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. My name is Terrence Smith. I'm one of the co-founders with Marcel and Antoine of Sentient Wellness. This challenge is important for the simple fact that women in our generation are plagued with breast cancer, and cancer in general is very detrimental to our species. And in us working in wellness, we wanted to do something that is actually doable and that people can actually experience and take part in, but is also a fight towards breast cancer, right? And we felt like this challenge was actually a very good challenge to do, and the suggestion was actually given to us by Clara, and we're going to get more into why breast cancer is connected to dairy and why dairy is such a big part of not only breast cancer but weight loss and overall health. and the difference between dealing with dairy in America and dealing with dairy in other countries. All right. So yeah, that's why it was important to me. I'm a wellness professional. I'm all about healing myself, healing my people, healing the planet, healing everybody, and helping out however I can. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I felt like this challenge was essential.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Antoine, if you could follow up with that as well.
Hello. Antoine Calderon. 1/3 of Sentient Wellness with Terrence and Marcel, not doing Marcel, excuse me. And why this challenge is so personal to me is just a family lineage of disease and just problematic health. And so that's why I joined my brother some time ago, some years ago, in our journey, our personal journey. And I thought it was important that now that we had this information and we've benefited from this information and lifestyle, that we share it amongst our friends, our family, and the world. And so dairy is just one part of a long story and journey that we have to deal with when it comes to food. So here I am, and I'm glad you're here to start the healing.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Antoine. And I'll follow up with that as well. My name is Marcel Rosegreen Walters, also part of the Sentient Wellness community. And same thing as Terrence and Antoine. It's personal to me because I actually was plagued with different food-related diseases. So I was asthmatic when I grew up, and as my asthma progressively got worse, and then I dealt with my immune system not being the best, obviously because of what I was consuming, and just lineage of diseases that were in my that plagued my family, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, glaucoma, things of that nature. So I just, ever since I've made a change in my life, and I used to be 320 pounds, I just really see the benefits of what foods do, what the mind does, and what a healthy and clean mind can do. And it doesn't have to be, you have to be a vegan or a vegetarian, but it's just permanently focusing on how those foods affect you and being aware of that. So, and now for all of the participants, again, please introduce yourself, your name, what made you want to be part of this challenge, and where you're coming from. Okay, so Karen, if you can lead, or Mom, if you can lead.
Okay, my name is Karen. I'm Marcel's mom. Happy to be a part of the challenge. Having seen Terrence, Marcel, and Antoine do what they do on a different level, and have adopted some of the changes that I've seen them do, I thought, okay, the dairy is the hardest one for me, as I'm a major cheese lover. So from breast cancer awareness, as a professional, I'm a nurse, so it's very personal because I see it firsthand. And just generally seeing the changes that the guys have made, and even Marcel with his weight loss, I am plagued by obesity. So it's personal to me also. So my challenge is to see what I will learn through this venture, through this journey myself, that I can impress upon others. So I also want to be that example, not just talk about it, but also be that example.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right, I will follow that up with Aaliyah. And same thing, Aaliyah, just your first name, where you're coming from, and why this is heartfelt for you and why you joined.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I joined this challenge because I am too trying to, like, I guess, wean myself off of dairy. It took me a month to get off of meat or stop eating meat and things like that. So I feel like this challenge will be the first step, and hopefully just accelerate that process. I know that dairy and the buildup and everything, it can make you sick. So I just feel like right now in this climate, it's important to stay healthy, and dairy is a huge part of disease, and I need to rid of it. So that's about it.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for joining. Thank you for being part of it. All right. And we're going to go with Clara next. Same thing, Claire. Why this is heartfelt to you, and where you're coming from. And just in case, Clara might be in a
Yeah, I think she might be babysitting.
Yeah, I figured.
So I mean, hope maybe we'll get.
If not, we'll go to Cammy.
Yeah, I can't talk.
All right, no problem. I kind of figured. All right, Camille.
Hey guys, so my name is Cami. I wanted to join this challenge, number one, because for a long time I've kind of been changing my diet. So I'm kind of like going slowly. I cut out meat many years ago, but dairy is also a very big challenge for me because even though like I've restricted myself from eating like eggs, I don't consume milk directly, I still love like baked products that I know has dairy in it. And occasionally cheese. So it's a struggle for me with the dairy, but I know like, you know, the consequences of it all. So I think this challenge is definitely a big motivator and definitely my main reason for joining.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. It was beautiful. Quan, or Quan, I should say. I would like if you could share, if you can. I'm not sure if you're able, if you're in an environment where you can speak.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everybody. I'm Daquan. This challenge is personal to me because I've been struggling to move away from dairy, and this is like a reminder that you know, we got to be mindful about the things that we eat. We know, me personally, I know that when consuming dairy products, I do feel like an excess of mucus in my system. And, you know, we all know mucus is a cause of harvest disease and other bacteria and things like that. So that's where it comes from for me. Just like everybody else, I have family members that have been plagued with different illnesses and things like that as a direct result of the foods that we eat. And I'm taking this challenge to ignite my commitment to health and wellness. So, you know, that's a little bit, you know, for me, but it is a long battle, you know, in my family. My mom has lupus, my grandfather had cancer. So, and in my understanding, it does stem from a lot of the things that we consume. So, you know, I'm just trying to do my part in changing that.
Definitely, I commend you for that, brother. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So with that, with everyone sharing, definitely want to say thank you for sharing. I know it takes, sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable to share, especially when it's personal things to you. So thank you for sharing. And with that, I want to go right into it right away with Terrence and allow Terrence to start sharing and really discussing some of the effects of dairy and how it's related to breast cancer, especially since we're here for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But I do want to highlight that it's not just that women that are plagued by this. So, you know, men are plagued by this as well. So I definitely commend Quan for being in here as well, and all the men that are part of this as well also for Breast Cancer Awareness Week. So Terrence, the floor is yours, my brother.
All right. So I'm just gonna hop right into it. I got a little PDF I'm gonna share with everyone and just touch on some key points on this PDF. All right, everybody see the screen? Okay, so starting off, we're dealing with dairy. So with Sentient Wellness, we have a category which Tuan is going to speak about called Sentient Foods. And just to like put it out there in the beginning, dairy is a sentient food. Dairy in itself isn't bad. Overconsumption is bad, overconsumption of anything. But primarily the problem with dairy, which is the case in America, and it's going to touch on that in a later part of this PDF, is in America, we have synthetic growth hormones inside of our dairy, right? Because farmers are given growth hormones so that cows can pretty much produce more milk, since there's so much of us and we consume so much dairy. And because of these growth hormones, they're not natural at all. They're synthetic and they're chemically made, which in themselves, since they go through a process, make them unhealthy. And since the cows are given this, we're given this when we consume the cow's milk. on top of the cow's growth hormones not being, oh, hold on, I gotta let somebody in. On top of the growth hormones, cows also deal with stress, trauma, abuse. They're not fed properly. They deal with all these other things, and all of that is also in their milk. All right. And the bad part about that is too, we're also consuming hormones from another animal, right? So our bodies naturally produce hormones that the human body needs, right? For the human body. And when we take ourselves and go and consume hormones from another animal, it can affect us in a great deal. And this is especially the case for women because women have a higher dosage of hormones within their body, right? Because they produce milk, especially in the breast, and especially in the breast that they're dealing with breast cancer, the hormones are directly connected to the cow's milk producing hormones, right? So then it causes this type of effect, which gives us breast cancer. And then these growth hormones, they actually stimulate the growth of the cancer cells inside of men and women, right? So then this produces what we know as cancer, okay? So this growth hormone is called RBGH, right? And this hormone is produced by our pineal gland, right? And our pineal gland produces this other hormone called IGF-1. And pretty much these hormones are pretty much what the cow needs to produce milk. But humans also produce the same hormones for women to produce milk as well. But the humans produce it for the human body and the cows produce it for the cow body. So then you can see where the issue comes in when you actually take in the cow's dairy and the cow's secretion of the pineal gland into the human body. The human body already produces it. So then you have excess as well and an imbalance, which is going to cause things to tilt off kilter. All right. And right here, we got the picture of the cow taking the shot. That's just showing the growth hormones that the cow is getting. This bottom picture, it pretty much just shows how the hormones work throughout the body, how the hormones are produced by the pineal gland, which we call the third eye. And then you see it work itself down into the liver, into the DNA. And then you see it work itself down with the insulin as well. And it also causes weight gain. So a lot of times we deal with being obese in America. A lot of it has to do with dairy, but not because it's a bad quality substance, because of the growth hormones. It's causing some people, based on their own genetic makeup, to gain weight faster and to hold on to weight longer. Okay? So I'm gonna move on to the next slide. So in this next slide, it actually shows an image of the pineal gland, just showing that pretty much these hormones have to do with what's being secreted by the pineal gland in both the cow and the human. All right. And that hormone that's produced in us is called somatotropin. Yeah, that's the name of the hormone that's actually produced in both humans and cows. Right. So, I mean, it's better. I'm a serious meditator. I know a lot of other people are. We probably produce that hormones in more of an excess for ourselves. The reality is we don't really need it from cows, okay? And cows don't receive it from us. I don't think no other animal receives it from us, but we receive it from other animals. It's kind of, topsy-turvy a little bit, all right? So then we go down further, and another issue we deal with is the fact that cows have other diseases that they deal with, right? And other bacteria that are developed from these growth hormones. And it's not like it's cleaned out of the dairy. When the cows are milked and the dairy is given over to us to drink, we also receive that as well. So on top of the growth hormones, the traumatic energy that's inside of the milk, because it's inside of the body of the cow, we're also dealing with like bacteria and other growth hormones that are put inside of the cow that aren't named. Right? And other synthetic chemicals that are put inside of the cow for other reasons that they aren't naming. We're consuming all of that when we eat dairy or when we drink dairy, okay? And we'll get into what the FDA says about that when we go a little further, right? And that's what this next picture shows. It shows that there's other synthetic added hormones inside of dairy that aren't labeled. So a lot of times you'll buy dairy, and now these days, because of people protesting, it'll say that it's BGH free or RBGH free or IGF-1 free. However, it might be free of those hormones, but it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with MSG. There are new hormones that are created now that we don't know the name of that are inside of the cow, right? And they don't got to put those on the label because we're not making an issue or a protest about them, all right? So then we fast forward and come down here and it says even though studies have shown this to be true, the FDA says that there is no evidence of biologically active growth hormones being absorbed by humans, right? So there's no evidence that we're technically absorbing these growth hormones, but it's not to say that these hormones aren't in the milk, right? And in other words, although RBGH appears at higher levels in milk from treated cows, the FDA is not convinced it has any effect on humans who drink it. Even though studies have shown this to be an issue, the FDA isn't convinced because they choose not to be. And this is why I got the picture here with the guy with the long nose and the money, because at the end of the day, we're still dealing with humans. We're dealing with the left brain and the right brain, right? And we're dealing with potential for other reasons, right? So at the end of the day, money talks. We got alcohol on the corner of our stores, and we got alcohol in our neighborhoods. Alcohol is legal. So if alcohol is legal and we're allowed to consume alcohol, which we all know has a negative effect on our bodies and our minds, it's not hard to make sure that things like milk that has a growth hormone effect on us also stays legal. I mean, it's easy. You know, they'll cross over the red tape for that as well. So it's just something to stay mindful of and to be aware of and to think about. And on this last slide, just to finish touching on the whole growth hormone part and the issue with milk, it's just simply, like I was saying earlier, it's not meant for the human body. It's not for the human body. And we got a picture down here. And I actually took the images and the meme, excuse the French, because I feel like the meme got the point across. One says, this is natural and beautiful. And the other one says, you know, this is straight effed up, right? And the reality is you never see a human drinking from a cow like this. And I actually pulled another image of a cow drinking from a woman, but I just felt like that would be extreme, right? Because when you think about seeing it, it's like unrealistic, you know, it's just, but at the same time, it's like, you know, a person will eat meat, but they won't kill the chicken. So it's just that kind of thing to be considerate about and to think about. And these kind of thoughts and these type of things that we contemplate, it actually helps us to be stronger in our resolve in doing what's healthier and doing what's right. All of this knowledge helped build up our ability to actually take the stand against what we need to do to make ourselves healthier. And on the bottom, it's just a couple other facts about what the growth hormones do, ideally dairy do, which is weight gain, acne, enhanced period symptoms, bloating, and then the mucus secretion built up. And like Dr. Sebi said, mucus is the cause of every disease. So it's just something to be aware of. And we're actually going to email this to everybody, and you can just look over it for yourself. So that was a quick synopsis about, you know, dairy and about the effects and why dairy isn't good in a scientific way. All right. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to hand it back over to Marcel, and we're going to touch on some other key points that we wanted to talk about today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Terrence. Does anyone have any questions about what was just shared? If something that came to your mind, please don't hesitate. Definitely ask the questions. There's some time. Everything that we cover, we're always going to give an option for Q&A. So are there any questions for what Terrence has covered or anything that might have, you know, jogged the mind within that? Perfect. I take silence.
Okay. I would also like to say hello to Siobhan.
Right. Thank you for joining us, Siobhan.
She just joined us, so I just wanted to say hello.
Auntie.
All right, so what we're going to do now is go on next to Antoine, and what Antoine is going to discuss are what are the sentient foods and just some of the benefits, and he'll probably do a screen share as well so you can follow. And again, remember, everything will be shared to you all after this Zoom call. So if you're, in case you can't write down anything, don't worry about it. Everything will be shared to you and sent to you. So
excuse me, Marcel.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to share. I just wanted to say, like, you know, I appreciate that information because sometimes we forget how things are transferred. And you mentioned some good points about, like, you know, if certain hormones are passed through, then certain bacteria and certain diseases that an animal is only, you know, exposed to, we start to get those things. And then when we go to the hospital, it's like we wonder why they can't diagnose us with the correct thing, because this is something foreign from a human being. So it's like, you know, it's just important to be, you know, brought up to speed about just how easily things are transferred without us really, you know, paying attention to the seriousness of it, because a lot of illnesses doctors don't know. You know, they're just they're just putting them in a box and kind of guessing from that. You know what I mean? And it's like we can control a lot more of our health when we know exactly what we're putting into our body. So, you know, I felt like this information was very helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, Quan. And that's true, you know, and I like to correlate science to a lot of things, right? Because we focus on what science says. So there's a study called Epigenetics, and it talks about how the cells actually have their own experience. Just like if you're talking to a human being for the first time and you're interacting with them, you're having an experience, your cells are having that same experience. So like what Quan was saying is when you consume a food from an animal that maybe was not treated in the best light, right? Maybe they weren't fed properly, they died in pain. All those things are now transferred over to the body. And those are the things that Quan was saying and Terrence was saying, that we're doctors sometimes, if you're not studying those things, you're going to miss some of those things, and then you can misdiagnose. But I do think doctors are highly knowledgeable, right? But we're now dabbling into holistic medicines and non-holistic medicine. So I think bridging that gap in the medical world is what's happening, right? So there can be a proper cohesion, and then we can properly talk about these things. And that's kind of what Tuan's going to kind of go into as well. Also, is talking about foods that are good for the mind, the body, and the spirit. So we no longer have to figure it out, because in business, like Terrence said earlier, business is money and it's also compassion, right? And we're trying to figure out how to bridge that together. And so yeah, with that, I'll let Tuan kind of go into sentient foods, and that kind of helps to bridge that a little bit, and then makes you more aware of the food choices that you want to make for yourself, because that's what it's ultimately about, is making sure that you're secure, that you're feeling good, and you're at optimal health. You know, it's like charging your cell phone. You always want it to be at 100%. So Tuan, sorry about that. Without further ado, I'll let you go into sentient foods and the benefits. But thank you, Quan.
Thank you, Marcel. I'm going to share the screen here so you guys can reference what I'm talking about. And if everybody can see that, give me a yay or nay. Good. Okay. Well, first off, I want to say thank you for being here again. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of everything, I want to start out with sentient food. As you know, we are sentient wellness. So a little understanding about the word sentient. The definition says to be able to perceive and feel. So we like to say that all living beings are sentient beings, right? And so we're in here at Sentient Foods. Now, Sentient Foods is nothing we created. It's its own category, existed before us. But essentially, it means foods that are pure and created through principles of nature. So things that weren't adjusted or manipulated in any way, it came exactly through nature, and it was here on a natural process. So it's a lot of information. Of course, the screen I'm sharing right now is on our actual website, sentientfoods.com. So you can always go back to this page, go to Sentient Foods, and use this as a reference when needed help. So let me break down a little bit of these. Okay, so we're going to start with sentient foods, right? And things like rice, grains, porridge, bread, cornflakes, wheat, as you can see it all right here, all things made from nature and are natural. We'd like to correlate sentient foods with foods that are for the mind, the body, and the spirit, right? And so that's how we categorize that. Now, when we move into mutative or stimulants, things like coffee, tea, chocolate, carbonated drinks, strong spices and spicy things. This is a stimulant directly based off the word of like your body reacting to it, right? And we like to say that this stimulant foods are for the body and sometimes for the mind, sometimes, right? Moving on to static foods like meat, fish, eggs, onions and garlic, mushrooms, alcohol. We like to call those static foods, right? And static foods are simply for the body. And what, in my perception of it, what I like to say, for the body and for the ego, right? They make you feel good. Now that's a deeper conversation because we correlate eating and food being an emotional body of the emotional body. So that's why certain times of year you correlate with eating certain foods because they bring up certain emotions and feelings. Right. And I think that's something that's not talked about a lot, is the emotional state that comes from eating certain things. Right. But that's another conversation. Now, when we talk about sentient foods, mutative foods, and static foods, they have an origin, and the origin comes from, they have an origin of another word, right? And those foods, I mean, those words come from India, right? And I'm going to give you a little bit. Terrence and Marcel are going to help me out with that. So as far as sentient foods, they categorize that as sattva. Sattva. Mutative foods are correlated with raja, and tamas is static foods, right? And then this just comes from, and Terrence is going to touch on this a little bit more, of the origins of this and how long these names and these categories date back, right? One thing we're going to touch on a little bit later is hybrid foods, because that's its own deep conversation, right? And what hybrids, if you're familiar with Dr. Sebri, he has a list of what hybrid foods are and what are sentient foods or nature's natural foods. And that's just important to know, as we all have different bodies and we process things differently, just to know what is straight from nature, what has been created, and what works best for you and your body. As we've gone through our process, we try and primarily stick to sentient foods, but we also know that, you know, it's a process. It's something that takes time, and it's important to go into this challenge, or as you make these life changes, to have compassion for yourselves. Terrence, Marcel, and I have been in this for over 10 years now, or right about 10 years. And so it didn't happen overnight, and it took time. So I don't want you to see these categories and look at these foods and be be scared of them, or be, you know, because it takes time. And, you know, I still have my struggles. I know we all still have our struggles. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. So again, just be compassionate with yourself and do the research, see what works best for your body. Another thing we also like to talk about is intuitive eating. Like, listen to your body, feel your body. Everything you need to know, your body will tell you. And so, again, a main diet of sentient foods, as you try to limit mutative and static foods, but give yourself time, have compassion for yourself, and little by little, you know, you can get to a place of balance. And I think that's what's most important, is can you have balance in your diet? Can you have compassion for yourself to where you can make healthy choices and moving forward?
Definitely, you know, and what Juan was saying, in simple, we have so many words out there, right? So just to kind of give you the easiest way that I remember it, when you think about sentient foods, it's like having raw foods, vegan foods, non-GMO. It's kind of that sentient foods is everything accumulated in one. So it's vegan, it's good for your mind, it's good for the body, it's good for the spirit. So it doesn't have any growth hormones in it. It's non-GMO, and that's what you have, what you can correlate sentient foods for. It meaning it hits every category of the best aspects of food that you're eating. So you don't have to think, is there MSG in here? Is it non-GMO? Is it truly organic? If it's sentient and it's truly sentient, it will encompass organic, non-GMO. It will encompass the fact that where the food came from, that they made sure that it has the highest form of love and appreciation going into it. So that's just the easiest way that I always remember sentient foods for me. It's always good for the mind, it's good for the body, it's good for the spirit, where the static foods primarily is only more of a feeling food, right? Like Juan was saying. And the mutative, the stimulant-based foods is good for the body, but it doesn't always benefit the mind. Like, it might make me drunk, it might make me tired. So, you know, when you eat a good hearty meal, if you're tired, prime example, that would be something in those foods that are causing you to go to sleep, which isn't in the best interest for you. We're not saying it's wrong, but something is causing your cells to have to shut down and to work harder. And that's why you're going to sleep. So your body can work harder to process these things.
And Marcel, to touch on it, the best example of a static food feeling is, I like to use Thanksgiving, right? We eat Thanksgiving food. We all have the itis after, right? And the itis is exactly what he's speaking on. It's actually tearing up the body a little bit and making you tired, which in most cases, foods are supposed to uplift you, give you energy and access. Exactly. So, but you know, it takes time. Again, I'm a big component of like making sure you give yourself time and making sure you understand that, like, because we all can be defeated, right? We also live in America, so there's a lot of unhealthy options that are very convenient. So again, give yourself some patience, give yourself some time, and then you can work on these things.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It's all about patience and time, you know, and what Terrence said earlier with business is always going to find out different ways to ideally make money and to focus on money. And I mean, it's changing. We're going more with compassion and love. But now when you see the word sentient, you know, again, it's plant-based, it's raw, it's, well, it might not be raw, but you know, it's vegan, it's non-GMO. So you know it's of the highest quality, so you don't have to worry and read the ingredients. And that's what we're going to get into later, is reading the ingredients and making yourself aware of what is good for you primarily and what's not good for you. So go ahead, Terrence.
Real quick, so just to touch on the message Siobhan sent, yes, onions and garlic, it is surprising. Onions and garlic aren't bad for us. They're used in different ways to heal. Loud spices sends our spirit into chaos, and the spirit is the root of everything. So once the spirit goes into chaos, everything else is going to go into chaos. And it's kind of easy to tell because of how loud it is when you smell it and taste it. It's very pungent. That pungentness is just an expression of the excess, right? So if you eat garlic raw while you're dealing with certain ailments, it'll help cure you. If you rub onions on the opening parts of your body, like your hands and your feet, it can pull toxins out your body. And if you ever notice, it pulls toxins out of the refrigerator as well. When you put onions in the refrigerator, it'll absorb things and suck things in. We eat them in excess, so that's what causes the chaos to our spirit. It hits us in the root, and then it works its way up. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely a shock. I mean, you don't got to cut it out completely, but you know, moderation, bringing it down a little bit, it'll make a big difference. You know, we eat garlic and we can smell it. You know, it just kind of indicates, you know, what it is with that. But I'm with you, Auntie, because, you know, Seldom and Twan to tell you, I love onions and garlic. And
I mean, who doesn't like this? You know, that's the base of a lot of seasonings, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But to Terrence's point, like, it is a spirit shifter.
Yeah. All right, so the floor is yours.
Perfect. And any other questions, Siobhan? That was a phenomenal question.
I have a question. When it comes to shifting your spirit, what exactly does that mean?
Good question. I'll let Terrence go into it first, and then I'll give my 2 cents. So go ahead, Terrence. I saw you on mute. That's why.
So to put it, I'm gonna try to make it practical, right? Like when we think of like the levels of it, right? The gradations of it. When you got the hard physical matter, and then you got the like smoke and smell and essence, the gaseous state, right? Which is more subtle. So when we're dealing with things that are heavy in the gaseous state, it connects quicker and stronger with our spirit. Because when you think about the spirit, I mean, ideally you could say the whole thing is the spirit, right? From the internal subtle part of us to the emotional part of us to the soft tissues to the physical matter. But when we really get to the core of ourselves, we're dealing with something that's subtle in the like gaseous state, and even subtler than that. And the fact that these foods have a strong toxic gaseous state, it's going to automatically shift that part of ourselves, which is subtle and gaseous. It's going to get there immediately, and it's going to get there in a loud way. And once that's hit, it's going to work itself out because everything starts in the center. So once that part of us becomes a little chaotic and knocked off balance, then it's going to hit the other dimensions of our body, right? It's going to hit our bloodstream. It's going to hit our bones. It's going to hit our muscles and tissues. It's going to hit our nerves. It's going to hit our flesh, right? And that's when, like when we deal with being musty, like being musty is a natural, wearing deodorant is a natural. When you change your diet and you start to eat nothing but vegetables and clean foods, you notice you will no longer smell must. That must is the toxins coming out of our pores, right? And that has a lot to do with things like onions and garlic and loud spices. That's pretty much an indication of like our spirit being intoxicated in a way. It's not something we would like to say about ourselves, but it's not a negative thing like we're evil or bad. It's just saying we're feeding ourselves other low vibrational forms of spirit, pretty much like babies starting out in the whole system of evolution. That's what these are. These are root vegetables and root foods that come from the ground. So us being humans, you could say we're at the top of the mountain. We've went through that whole change. Our body requires things that are at the top of the mountain, not things that are at the bottom of the mountain, right? So it's just those kind of things. We use them for different reasons, but not to consume the way that we consume. If that makes sense, Lee, I hope I explained it in a way that makes sense.
Did that answer your question, Lee?
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And to kind of lead a little bit off that, just in case other people are still thinking about that, think of it like science says, right? We're all sound. So when you consume something, that vibration is sent to the spirit, and it can radiate in a way where it's very fruitful for the spirit, or it can radiate in a way where it's like it's kind of traumatic, right? When you see like the wavelengths kind of being more traumatic versus more just in a nice, beautiful flow. And again, like Terrence said, it's not a bad thing. It's more just being aware of these things. So if you're meditating, things of that nature, you're going to start to be aware of your energy, and you're going to start to see what takes you off kilter. Like maybe, before you used to like violent movies, right? But now when you watch certain gory movies, it just hits you very differently. And you're like, it's you don't say no to it. It's just something you don't gravitate to anymore. And that's kind of the same correlation that Terrence was bringing up too, if that kind of makes, in case anyone else was having thoughts about that. But phenomenal question. Yeah, phenomenal question. Any other questions before we move on to the next section? Okay. All right. So with that being said,
both of you guys, that was great.
Appreciate you, Quan. Thank you, Quan. Anything you want to say to that, Quan? I know you've been on your journey for a while too with that. So have you felt that, or have you come into starting to feel like your spirit is saying no to this, or saying, or gravitating to that? Have you seen that within your journey? I know you've been on this journey now, close to 2 years, right?
Well, I've been on it for a long time, longer than that, but since moving back to Texas, I've slipped, and I've been struggling. So I'm trying to regain some traction. But I can relate to what Terrence said, like just the understanding of like us as beings evolving, and like being at a certain point now where my body doesn't require some of the things that I used to eat. But to go back of what Twan said earlier too, eating is has such an emotional connection that that's like a codependency. That's what we kind of just, we resort back to, because it's like when you're hungry, you're gonna go for what you're not trying to get into the particulars of things and stuff like that. That's why just getting ahead of yourself and knowing when you should do certain things so you don't fall behind in that area. But for me, it just related to like, letting some stuff go. Like the older you get, the less I'm feeling the need to like eat so much sweets. You know what I mean? I still eat sweets. It's just like, I can tell that it's like decreasing. You know what I mean? My desire for it is just knowing, like you said, like reading your body, figuring out what your body is really saying it wants, you know what I mean? Versus picking up something that you just familiar with.
And Quan, I really appreciate you bringing that back up, because it's something I wanted to harp on. Is like just being conscious of like, how do you reward yourself when you're happy? What are the things you eat when you're sad? How do you feel when you're in an environment and you're being kind of kind of bullied to drink this or eat that in those spaces. And how to, you know, kind of understanding that making those decisions are self-love, right? That's self-love and that's compassion for yourself, regardless of what decision you make, right? If you have a little bit or you go in on it and understanding that, you know what, I went in this weekend, so during the week, I need to balance it out. And I need to eat something that's going to make me feel better in the long run, right? And so, because that's the whole point of being healthy. And I hate that health has become something so taboo to whether it's like it means a certain type of person, when really we are healthy. We are trying to have healthy habits. Like that's what makes us human. And so understanding your emotions, understanding how that's connected to food is a really big thing. And that's why I keep saying having compassion for yourself, because it's not going to happen overnight. And your body's going to have cravings and urges, and the process of eliminating those is taking steps. And I think you all can do it.
I agree. And, you know, that kind of goes into the next topic. It's, you know, what do you eat? What do you focus on, right? And those foods. And it's like Tuan and Quan said earlier, we call it backsliding. We call it going back. If you went back, let's say you did let go of certain food and you happen to go back to consuming those foods, like Tuan said, don't beat yourself up, be compassionate to yourself. There's a reason that you're going back to that. And like what Terrence always correlated, and he spoke about like a year ago, and it made sense, right? It's those seeds that get planted and eventually they make sense when you have that epiphany or that revelation. But he gave me food for thought one day and was like, you know, the ocean, the wave, they come onto the seashore, but they also go back, right? That's kind of like going forward and going backwards. However, every time the waves touch the shore, they leave an impression. So then an experience happened, and simple. So within that experience, you learn something fruitful for yourself. That's why maybe, Quan, right now you went to Texas and you would say, you know, you went back. You didn't go back. You went there to revisit something that maybe you didn't see before, because your awareness has changed now, right? Now you're thinking differently, your mind is changing. So now you're getting to see those different facets that you didn't see before. And now it allows that cog to continue to move progressively forward, right? But in a sense, in the physical me looking at you, it seems like you went backwards because you ate fish or meat or dairy. But in the truth of it all, you didn't, because internally you had a completely different revelation that you had to have in this process of eating that, you know, that cheese again, or whatever it is to bring you there. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Quan. I saw you on mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, yes, you hit the nail right on the head with that. And one of the ways that I have gained a more of an awakening is because coming from New York City to Texas, where New York City, you can see the food deserts, you know, real right in front of you. A state like Texas, where everything is spread out, it's the same thing. It's just a further drive away, but it's all the same unhealthy stuff. So, you know, and it's like Tuan said, sometimes, you know, like they say, when in Rome, you'll do like the Romans, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, I have to eat something, and it's almost like you feel bullied, you know what I mean? into, you know what I mean? Partaking in something, because it's like, what you would really want to go to ain't around, like, you know what I mean? Ain't convenient. And health isn't convenient sometimes. Wellness isn't convenient sometimes. We have to get out and seek it. So yeah, I just, you know, you hit the nail on the head, and I appreciate that.
No problem, and I appreciate you for sharing. You know, and I would say, while we're going into the next topic, a big thing that we don't look at is you have to understand, like, your daily activities matter, right? And there's no judgment to your daily activity. I mean, as in, when you're at work can be stressful, especially if you're in corporate America or whatever job you may do, right? So there's a lot of different pressures that we feel. So that's why, like Tuan was saying, it's okay to go eat. Maybe it's okay to go eat that fish, maybe, or maybe go eat that Oreo. It's okay, because you're dealing with so much pressures in life already. You sometimes gotta have a balance, you know, you gotta make yourself feel better, but then be aware that, all right, this Oreo maybe isn't the best, but, you know, today I need it. And just being aware of that. That's what I had to do, right? I used to be 320 pounds. So I used to love cookies. I love anything that is sweet. So for me, yes, I was losing weight and I was with Twan and Terrence losing weight, but I couldn't help but every single Friday, I had to get some vegan cookies, no matter what. Every single Friday, and Twan and Tia tell you, they'll laugh at me like, yo, every Friday he's going to go to Whole Foods and he's buying 6 vegan cookies. Like, he has to do it, but it was my balance, right? Work stressed me.
Marcel, holy, I want you to continue, but I just want to let people, I want to say thank you. We know we're running up on an hour.
Right.
We're right at almost an hour. So I want to thank you for everybody for joining. If you have to go, we understand, but we're also here longer if you have more questions or want to talk about more things. So thank you again. Thank you for showing up for the first one. You're one step closer to all those prizes. And I hope that you guys win. Good luck.
Right, yeah. And we definitely hope that this was fruitful for you all. You'll definitely get an email from us midweek, letting you know, again, we'll be on the call, be on a Zoom call again for Saturday at 12 o'clock Eastern. And every day is going to be an hour. From that hour, again, you're able to stay on longer in case we go until about 1:30. Terrence, my apologies. Go ahead.
Marcel's just going to touch on some good tips for weight loss and dealing with weight loss and dealing with food. So if you want to stay, it'll definitely be fruitful for that. That's all I wanted to say. And thank you for coming, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for coming. And if you would like, I'll go quickly into it. I won't take up a lot of time. I'll probably do it really in about 5 to 10 minutes. So I'll quickly share a screen. And just to lead off with, Whole Foods, as we all know, has a, they kind of run the whole healthy market, right? Ideally. So I say that to say that technology is great nowadays. And the quickest thing I would always say is, whether you're on your computer, whether you're on your phone, go to Whole Foods just to kind of see. Not saying that you have to go to Whole Foods. There's Trader Joe's, there's Thrive Market. I know Claire goes to Thrive Market, phenomenal location. And there's other places that give you Fresh Market, prime example, Sprouts. Fresh Market is a bit more expensive than Whole Foods, but there's various places where you can get these healthy foods. What I would focus on with the healthy foods is the ingredients. That's the biggest thing. So we're not saying you have to be a raw vegan. No, if you're eating chicken, you can continue to eat meat. You just want to get the best grades of meat. So right now there's 5 different grades. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's very hard to find the best grade in Whole Foods, but they do have the option. So what you can do is quickly go onto Whole Foods. So you see my screen. I live in Fort Lauderdale, so I'll put in my zip code. And of course, whatever pops up for Whole Foods will pop up right beneath you. So for me, it was the Coral Springs location. And what you can quickly do just to kind of look at small things is, let's just go to meat really quickly. 1 second, it's over here. So if we go to, let's type in salmon. Salmon popped up. So you could go into salmon on the Whole Foods website. And as this pops up, big thing that I always tell everybody is, you want to get fresh salmon. So if you look at this one here, or this one, ideally that will be your fresh salmon. Hold on 1 second. But then the biggest thing is, you want to look at ingredients. So in everything that we purchase, we always read the ingredients right here. So with this one, excuse me, I would say, I would stay away from it because it was color added to it, right? So when I see things like color added, if I just don't see the word salmon or fresh caught salmon right here, and there's other aspects added to it, rule of thumb, you want to stay away from it. You want to look at your ingredients in the most simplest way. If you see a dissertation, meaning you see a long paragraph, more than likely it is not the best salmon, meaning there is something added into it to keep it preserved, or they might have added a growth hormone, anything along those lines. So going to my nutritional facts, let's see here. Ingredients of feed and farm. All right, so this was actually fed from a farm, which ideally fresh, whether it's fresh, I rather more fresh caught salmon versus farm raised, but farm raised salmon can be okay as well also. But this is where you want to look at these different things here. And then for foods primarily, let's type in,
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt or pause, but can we go back where I saw a synthesized? So what does that mean for fish? I consume a lot of fish, so that I don't think I've ever seen a
So
synthesized.
it's kind of like adding, so it's kind of like adding different things to the fish. So this means that they added something to the fish. Ideally, me, when I see things like this, depending upon how far you are on your food journey, if you're far in your food journey and you cut out a lot of different chemicals, then when I see something synthesized, I would stay away from it, because then you can go to Whole Foods and they're not showing it up here, but when you go actually to their fish section, they have fresh caught fish that have no additives, no chemicals. It was literally just from it was bought from the ocean. There's nothing added to it. Same thing with the meat. So they have different meat with different growth hormones. You can see it when you go to the meat or the dairy section. When you're actually there, they have it on their window and they'll show you step 1 through step 5. They don't show it online. That's probably more of a business move from them. I can't tell you why they don't show that online, but it's just something that they stay away from for whatever reason. But when you go actually to Whole Foods and you go to the location where they have the seafood and the meats where they actually cut them fresh, they'll actually tell you and educate you on the different grades of meats that they have and the different grades of fish that they have. Does that answer your question, Camilla?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Real quick. So to touch on what Cam said, it's synthesized with I think it said carotenoid, and I think that's like it's a chemical pretty much derived from plants for the color. So they're pretty much taking the pigmentation from plants and putting it in the fish to give the fish a certain color. Now, I mean, it could sound ideal because it's being derived from plants, but at the end of the day, it's not natural. It's really in there, you know? So it's still an issue when you consume it. Like when you bring the chemicals together, the actual reaction is probably not in our best interest. Pretty much what I'm saying. We just rather get it caught in the wild without
Got it. All right, thanks, guys.
No problem. And you know, and it's a business standpoint, right? Businesses, they have to have things that stay on the shelf, right? And so that's the thing that we always have to think of is business wants things to stay on the shelf for as long as possible, where the human body wants to ideally eat foods that are within 30 days or less, right? You want to eat them as fresh as possible because that's what's best for you. The rule of business does state, though, whatever lasts longer, we're going to make the most money off of, right? So we always have to be aware that the business side sometimes doesn't have health in the best interest. And just to kind of go, since we're focusing on non-dairy products, so we have 2 versions of almond milk. Almond Breeze is, everyone knows Almond Breeze is pretty known. However, I'm going to look at the ingredients, right? So when we look at almond milk, this is kind of where we would kind of say not the best, right? We have calcium carbonate. Sea salt is fine. However, then we have potassium citrate, which is another chemical added. Sunflower lectin, which that's from the sunflower itself, so that's actually fine. The Gillian gum is actually fine. You'll find a lot of gum in a lot of the different milk products. Natural flavors, depending on how far you are on your food journey, it's just you want to stay away from natural flavors because they're not really being specific. They're being, in the word of business, they're doing business law and keeping themselves safe by saying there's a natural flavor in there, but you don't know what that natural flavor is, and we don't know how it was made. Usually any natural flavors are not made organically, they're made inorganically, meaning they come from an actual fruit, whether it's a lime, a lemon, but then they then take it into the lab and chemically induce what they need to take from it to create that flavor. So those are the things that you want to stay away from. Now I'll show you another almond milk that has less ingredients that you can kind of go to. So 1 second. So here we have less things. You still have the potassium citrate, but here you have other things that are actually real items in it. Calcium carbonate, you're still going to see that, but you're kind of now seeing what to look for. You want to look in the ingredients for everything. So just again, rule of thumb, if it's too long, if it's like a dissertation, you want to stay away from it. If you're buying cookies, prime example, let's just say you bought a chocolate chip cookie. It should have cocoa, it should have chocolate, and it should have other variations to make it, whether it be wheat, whether it be some sort of grain or something along those lines, okay? that's just the rule of thumb for ingredients is, and when you're looking at ingredients is, and again, I don't want to go too much into that, but it's very straightforward. You just want to look at the ingredients is, you want to see if it's real living things that are put into the ingredients. So again, like if you're, just think of it like you're actually making or cooking something. So if you're looking at buying chips, again, nothing wrong with buying chips. You want to make sure they're kettle chips. Kettle chips only have sunflower oil. They have Himalayan sea salt usually, and that's usually it. You want to stay away if it has canola oil, if you can primarily. But again, depending on how far you are in your food journey, you don't have to be too strict with the ingredients. Any questions on there? Did I go too fast into that? I know we're running on time, so I was trying to condense it as quick as I could for everybody.
That was good.
Okay, perfect. Well, that is primarily everything that we wanted to cover today. We wanted to say again, thank you for coming on Zoom. Thank you for being part of the challenge. Thank you for challenging yourself and doing something that's uncomfortable, right? And really having faith in yourself, because this is really what it's about, is challenging yourself, taking yourself to the next level internally, and doing whatever you feel that's the best for you to do within this journey, and just to be aware of yourself and to be aware of how the body feels. That's the most important thing that I can say.
And to piggyback on what Sel just talked about with weight loss, something that's easy that I think of working with people is pretty much anything that's unnatural, the body can't use, and it's going to hold on to, and there goes fat. Anything that's natural, the body uses, it digests, and it gets rid of. So you can think of it in that way too when you're dealing with weight loss.
And another piggyback is, I know label readers are annoying. You know, label readers are annoying, but it's imperative to know what's in the food so you can avoid what the body can't release naturally. So read the labels.
We appreciate y'all. We appreciate y'all.
Definitely thank everyone today. Thank you for your time. Sending you all positive vibrations for the rest of your day, rest of your week. And, you know, if you're going to work on Monday, positive vibrations, you know, keep your mind as clear as possible. Continue with what you're doing with the dairy challenge. We know it's hard for 30-day no dairy, but continue to stay with it. You'll see pictures from us. If you need, we're on an email with everyone. So if you want to write on the email, you're more than welcome to write on the email, but we'll be sending out emails.
I'm so proud of everyone. Y'all stayed for the extras and all. So like,
and this will be email, Cam.
Yes, it will be email. And yes, Twan, thank everyone for staying. We really appreciate it.
Like, I see some people really trying to change their lives. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And
we do want to ask lastly, was this fruitful for you all, or is there anything you would like us to focus on next time?
This was great.
Great, perfect.